and welcome to Schmidtless Live. I am your host, Kurt Schmidt, president and partner at Foundry. And boy, am I excited today. I've got an amazing individual, Jason Scherschligt from Solution Design Group is joining me. We're going to talk about all things product, all things that make product managers great and good at what they do. So I am excited to talk to him, but before we get started, I also have to mention that we are hiring at Foundry. So check out the thing, foundrymakes.com/careers. That's the place you want to go and check out the job postings that we got. And if you like the video today, make sure leave a comment, share. We're going to be talking about all sorts of things. So if you want to comment, we can join the conversation. Why not? It's just going to be me and Jason hanging out. Speaking of, Jason, how are you today? Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Kurt. Nice to talk with you.
Nice to talk with you. So, Jason, you're at Solution Design Group. What do you do there, and what have you been up to lately?
I am with Solution Design Group. Solution Design Group, or SDG, is a product strategy and technology delivery consultancy based here in the Twin Cities. And what I do for them, I sort of have a 50-50 split job. Half my time I'm working with Solution Design Group's clients on building great products, building up their product strategy and product management disciplines. And the other half of the time I'm helping build the product discipline for Solution Design Group, defining our methodologies, our teams, et cetera. So I'm really enjoying it. I've been there about a year and a half after working independently. And before that, I spent a lot of time in product as a product manager, product strategist, product executive at various interesting organizations.
That's good. And then the other half of your time, the other 50% to the 100%, you're an author, right?
Well, I do try to do quite a bit of, I'm an English major, Kurt, and I do try to do quite a bit of writing as well. And about a year ago, I had the pleasure of co-writing a book called The North Star Playbook with a gentleman named John Cutler, who is a well-known product consultant and product development coach. He works with a company called Amplitude based in Silicon Valley. And we wrote this playbook together, and that was published January of 2020. I think it officially went live. So that was pretty exciting as well. And I do quite a bit of writing on the Design Group blog and on other outlets having to do with product.
It's good. Yeah, I can't recommend your work enough. It's fantastic. That's why I'm really excited to talk to you today. So today we're going to be talking a lot about what makes a great product manager. What are the things that they should be focusing on? What are some of their characteristics, skill sets, areas of focus, just all the different areas. I know it's a very deep subject. And one of the things that I've found, and I've said it a lot on this show, Jason, is that one of the biggest problems I see in product management is that there's no standardization when it comes to it. So I get so many people asking, like, how do I get into product management? How do I become a product manager? And it's hard for me to say, well, you can't go and get this certification necessarily. But here's different skill sets that you should be really focused on and the areas that you should be building. So I want to talk to those specifically with you today, right? And so one of the first things that comes to mind is obviously team building a great product team, because you alone as the product manager are not creating the product on your own, at least not in most cases, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Kurt. When I think of the sort of secret of a great product discipline at an organization or a team that I can tell is going to make really good products, it starts with the team. And that's not just with the product manager. It's really with the sense of this cross-functional, dedicated group of people who are all obsessed with solving a particular problem for a customer group, or identifying what that problem is, and then developing the right kind of solutions to it, rather than taking an order and executing the thing they were handed to build, and then going their separate ways. It's really the difference between a project kind of mindset and approach to things and a product approach. A product approach lasts a while. And even if you think about who are my teammates, I love the phrase teammates on a mission, that there's this dedicated group of people, just like on a NFL football team, you've got, the the defensive back and the giant offensive tackle and the kicker and the quarterback. They all have different skill sets and different sorts of backgrounds, but they all come together and do their part. So you have a similar sort of situation on a great product team. Product engineers, product designers, product analysts, market researchers, but they all work together. And a simple test question is, if you say to someone, who are your teammates at work? It's great when you don't hear them say, well, I'm a Java developer, so it's all the other Java developers. It's really, it's the people who are working on the same product as me.
Yeah, they're all shooting to the same goal, right?
They're on my team, right? So as a product manager, your job is to assemble, to inspire, to clarify, to facilitate that sort of a team, so that it can build the great product in response to the needs of the customer.
And those aren't necessarily hard skills. They're soft skills, right? I mean, they're I don't know, again, why they call them soft skills, because they're the hardest skills sometimes for people to seem to learn.
I like terms like foundational skills. That you can build sort of technical skills on top of them, or even human skills, where there are these kind of foundational, essential skills of facilitation, communication, inspiration. A great feature of a good product manager is to have a lot of charm, and be able to sort of tell a story well and clarify a vision well. So all those are essential skills really for a product manager.
Well, and that's a great segue. Go ahead.
It gets especially difficult because in many organizations, probably in most, the product manager isn't the org chart manager of this group of people. So you have to manage and lead that team by influence, more than
because they don't report to you. You can't fire them if they don't do their job.
Exactly.
You can't replace them. So that's a good segue into the vision side of product management, being able to establish a vision, because I think that's part and parcel with that, building a team. But again, I've seen over the years product managers that launching this feature is my vision, or getting this next release out is the vision, right? So how do you build that skill when maybe your metrics and all the things that are telling you what a good job is release. And so I've seen this before, because it happens with project managers as well, right? On time, on budget. And that's what you get paid for. But, if the customer service is bad, you get yelled at for it, but you're not necessarily being judged on or compensated on customer service. And maybe that product manager, necessarily their compensation isn't tied to NPS score as much as it might be, release schedule. So talk to me a bit about that. How do you get past that and work with your product managers to have that sort of approach and build a vision? Because I feel like you got to kind of create a space for them to do that, right?
Yeah. Well, and you raised several great points. One is even how you're rewarded. And we do tend to reward the output, having met a timeline on budget, having delivered all the requirements, which is one of the most hilarious words in technology.
Right.
It presumes that we know what's a thing is required to do up front. But really, so I'm glad you talk about reward systems. So how can we just, even in team goals and team celebration rituals, how can we celebrate and we always do it, we put cake in the break room and say we're gonna have a little party because we got the thing done. But how can we also, or even more importantly, celebrate the impact that we delivered? We've seen a customer metric advance in a certain way, or we've achieved a certain outcome for our users and therefore for our business. So one is your measurement and celebrations and rewards is something to think about differently. You also talked about vision. I think it's important to get that vision to be owned. I talked about teammates on a mission, but to get that vision to be owned by the entire team, so that they are all sort of inspired and motivated by it, rather than too often a value proposition or a vision statement is something that gets written, with some management consultant and the executive teams, and maybe you hang it on the wall somewhere, but does anybody really know where it is? So you've got to kind of repeat it and get people involved in it and make sure it is connected, not just to your business, but to your users, to your customers. What are we going to do for them? I like the just as a simple Mad Lib, the Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm template says, for the blank who needs to blank, our product is the blank that blanks. Unlike blank, we blank. And if you just write that down and fill in the blanks, for the blank who needs to blank, that's for our customer who has a particular need that they need to be able to accomplish. Our product is the blank. Well, that's sort of a metaphor or an analogy that you can start to describe. This thing's going to serve like a essential guide or a field, notes or something like that, or the go-to resource, where you can start sort of defining what you want to become for that customer who has that need, and then how it will solve those needs. And then lastly, how will you differentiate? That's not necessarily, it's a bit of a mouthful. It's not necessarily something you market, but it can sure organize and inspire a team if you start looking at formats like that too.
Well, especially in a fast-growing company or a fast-moving industry, you get caught up in the release cycles and the feature definition, feature releases, and these sorts of things because. I see people, and years ago, I think it was pretty normal to have like a 2-year roadmap. I mean, I think it was pretty normal. And now if I see roadmaps past 3 or 6 months, like I'm like, good luck with that. I mean, it's okay to say like, this is where we want to be in 3 years. It's fine. It's not a problem as long as not everybody is assigned to like, or adhering to it. Like it's the, like it's the Constitution, right? Like we cannot sway from this. Because the industry is going to change, the customer sentiment's going to change. And that's where I see the vision getting clouded sometimes, because especially in a fast growing company, you might have, founders or executives that are like, go, go, go. I need to tell people that we're launching new things. And, and all of a sudden, like their NPS score is dropping and they're like, oh, that's because we're not releasing new things enough. And it's like, well, maybe you're not releasing the right things. It can be kind of this swirl that people get caught up in. And that's where I've seen lots of product managers just leave companies or just move on because they're caught up in this whirlwind because maybe they're trying to establish a vision, but they're having a hard time doing it. So to that point, Jason, tell me about what's the best way to communicate that vision? Okay, so I'm a product manager. I've got a great vision for where I want this thing to go and what it's going to do. What are some effective ways to communicate that, not only to the team, but also to leadership and the people that are sponsoring this?
Yeah. Well, one of the things you just said as you were describing some of the problems with the way this happens is maybe we aren't building the right thing, and maybe we're getting too prescriptive, too far out. So I'm not anti-roadmap. But I think roadmaps that get too prescriptive are the problem. And as you said, especially further out. So it's almost like you need to lay over this cone of uncertainty. I like thinking in terms of, the kind of 3 horizons model: now, next, beyond.
Yep, for sure.
Now, next, and future, with the idea that I'll have some specificity in the near term and a lot more variability in the far terms. And there can be even, if you think of those time frames, instead of them being this is what we're going to do year 1, year 2, year 3, think in terms of more compressed time frames. Like I'm fairly certain about 3 months. I'm less certain about 3 quarters. I'm far uncertain about 3 years. So you have sort of expanded time frames as you think about them. So that's another technique you can use, is just say, this is our now, next, and beyond roadmap. And then that kind of can get you out of the false sense of commitment to delivering a specific thing on a specific date. It's now 2023, January. I saw your roadmap that said, the configurator was going to be live then. No, and also frame these roadmap opportunities less in terms of the feature and more in terms of the problem or the theme that you want to then pursue. So I like thematic roadmaps that are really laid out in terms of the key themes that align to that vision that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, because I just like you mentioned, Jason, I've seen lots of coming into clients' roadmaps and seeing lists of features, and I'm like, this is not a roadmap.
Yeah.
A roadmap should be a list of questions we want to get answered, right? Or just like you said, right? These are things that we need to confirm or toss out the window and move on or move in a different direction. So with that, I mean, again, I love making segues. So another problem I see with the product managers, and this sometimes doesn't come necessarily from the characteristic of that project manager or their, but the organization and the way it's shaped. So getting access to customers, having direct access to those customers and the end users. Sometimes you can be blocked by sales, and don't get me wrong, I love salespeople, but sales and account people can be like, no, like I want to talk to the customer. I'm the one who's selling. I'm the one who's doing this stuff. I've built a relationship. It took me 2 years to get this client in the door, and now you want to go talk to them. And same on the marketing side, where they're like, well, what are you going to say? How are you going to approach them? What's that documentation or survey going to look like? Is it on brand? There's a lot of hoops that a product manager might have to go through to get access. I get it. In certain organizations, you just default have access. I get it, but I've seen it over and over again. But I know you have an opinion on that, on the importance of that access to customers.
I mean, it's everything, really. I go so far as to say, as a product manager and as a product team, your boss is your customer, your user. I even, when I was a VP of product for an ed tech company, at our annual conference in Las Vegas, I gave a keynote presentation, and I told this sort of elaborate joke about, do you guys know who I work for? And it is not for him or for her, and pointed to our CEO, and everyone chuckled. And I said, it's for this person. And I put up a slide of this was a K-12 ed tech product, and it was a slide of a teacher in a classroom. This is who we and our team need to always think about. Their satisfaction is what means we're doing the right thing. So you have to know that customer. You have to, and I think there's great value. One simple practice that's easy to overlook is getting into their context. So not just reading an email, but actually so many different products are used in interesting environments. This one's a manufacturing system, and it might be being used in a place that's loud and dirty and dusty with glare and distractions. And meanwhile, I worked with another client where we were working on dental practice software. And you realize that, at a dentist office, maybe there's a child and maybe there's rubber gloves being worn. So touch screens work a little differently. And there's some fear and anxiety that some people might be having. And there's crying children. And, there's all sorts of things that come up, and you don't quite experience it until you get out into the wild. So another great practice is to get out of the building when you can. You also mentioned sales and marketing. This may sound sort of trite and easier said than done, but become their friends, become their allies. You can help them sell the product and market the product by getting to know the customer well. So wherever you can, pair up with your sales reps and ask to tag along. Maybe start by saying it's not a formal usability study or market research, but I just want to see the environment and kind of soak up the vibe of the customers. And then you start to become sort of friendlies with your sales reps and tag along. And then you've established the right kind of relationship that you can start to do a little more.
They should look at you as an ally, and but again, I've seen where, again, culturally, maybe those bridges haven't been built, and maybe you're a new PM coming in, and it can be an uphill battle.
Right. You can also use them as a sort of proxy for the customer. I mean, there's nothing like getting you out into the wild where
they can be kind of your alpha testers, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, you represent the customer, you see them. How would you think? And again, your attitude is one of discovery and learning, and lightweight building early versus over investing in a thing that turns out not to be what the customer wants. So maybe get a sales rep or a customer support rep, somebody who understands the market well, and show them your lightweight prototypes and some of your vision ideas and your user flows. And if it worked like this, they'll tell you, you know what, actually the way the market really works is they never like to this sort of point, and you'll learn that really quickly. And there's, again, no substitute for doing that, and no substitute for doing that early and cheaply, so that you haven't invested too much in
right. Well, and that kind of dovetails into measuring and identifying these areas of impact that you're having with this sort of work. Because honestly, one of the times where I've been the most stuck in my career, in my past, is where the boss or the person, who's writing my paycheck is saying, we got to release these features, we got to do these things. But the customers are, I'm feeling like there's something different being said by the customers. And the situation I'm in is that I either make my boss upset by doing what I think is going to be right in 4 to 6 months, or I do what's right now and appease them. And then in 4 to 6 months, we're getting bad feedback from the customers, and now it is my fault, right? So I'm kind of stuck in this. I've been in that thing, right? So where I've seen, and where I think where the opportunity was for me to get better at that point was having better metrics and better statistics to be able to have those conversations one way or the other. Because I feel like in a lot of product areas these days, people are capturing data from everywhere. The problem is they're not using it to make decisions or to help steer those roadmaps. They're just collecting it like my mom collects, country living magazines. She loves them. They're stacked up.
That sounds like quite a collection.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe in her place, but she'll never get rid of them because they got recipes, But it's the same with this data, right? And so talk to me a bit about how you've seen people use measurement in order to better enhance their role as a product manager.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, and I really like the way you framed it. As part of the conversation with maybe your executive or senior leadership teams. This is maybe a kind of obvious technique as well, but to frame a request for a feature or a thing I need done by a certain time, almost reframe it as an outcome that executive is seeking, or a key element of our business strategy that we need to accomplish. So the executive might think the thing that we need to do is have the such and such that does this, because that's what I've been told already is what we needed to do. And so we've sort of, built our funding structures, et cetera, in order to deliver that thing. But if you can reframe the conversation with a sort of, you've heard maybe of the 5 whys technique. Well, why do you want that? Well, why do you want that? Why do you want that? Ask that 5 times, and you'll drill down deeper into the real motivation, and then use those metrics. You say you want this, portal for this type of user.
You want this outcome.
You want that. You want that because you believe we have a problem with serving our self-service of our customers through our phone lines. So therefore, you believe this portal website will do the trick. I'm making up this example. But what if you actually discovered that now you've learned that the problem isn't we need a portal, it's our customer service isn't right through this other kind of channel. Well, maybe what you need to do is on an existing application or product or website, without having to build a new one, you need to enhance it in some way. Again, I'm totally making up this example off the top of my head. And then what you're really trying to do then is drive that metric. You would think that we have a problem that customers who are using this are not getting this kind of answer. Let's convert that into some sort of a metric. And you could sort of develop the framework that says, we know that we're serving our customer well if within the first 2 visits to such and such a website, they've been able to set up their profile in such and such a way. Again, totally making it up. We're seeing that that's not happening and they're going to this other spot. But what we really want them to be able to do is serve themselves well. And the first thing they need to do that is set up a profile. So what we want them to do is have a profile complete by second visit. Right now, only 15% of them are doing that. Let's target trying to get that to 30% by the end of the year. And then break that down to its constituent parts. So what we need is, an easy ability to set up the new profile, a reward that you get upon doing that, and then you can measure each of those as well. And then you've got this little metrics framework, all driving towards that key metric. And if you construct that well and communicate that well, that initial request for a particular feature will sort of dissolve. People might
Right.
even forget that's what they wanted. What they wanted was the outcome.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Well, and that's again to the kind of one of the later points I want to talk about is getting that senior leadership
yeah.
buy-in, and that and because it's really hard to make things really move inside of an organization, let alone in a product, without that senior leadership buy-in from those things. So how can I get, what are some areas that I need to work on? So obviously, like you said, I think one of the great skill sets of a PM is being able to motivate the team, to inspire the team, share that vision, get them on board. It's got to work the other way too, right?
Yep. Yeah. And I think it's reframing conversations to value.
Okay.
Again, the senior leadership, and you're exactly right. This, frankly, is a problem at more organizations than I care to admit, where senior leaders, who, by the way, mean well, they're in charge of a company for very good reasons, and they get a lot of benefit when the company performs well as well. But
For
they're
sure.
equipped, and their training and their experience has led them towards being decisive and making sort of good, quick decisions about what it is we should do and moving on from that. And sometimes some of our product language, like let's experiment or let's try this hypothesis, can start to sound pretty darn squishy, like you're going to experiment on my business. Well, it's not. So again,
not a good time. Not a good time.
Right. So reframing that language into let's have a diversified portfolio of bets that we want to place. Like here's something that's foundational that we have strong evidence is going to move the needle, but maybe won't do a huge amount. Versus at the same time we want to run with a few little maybe higher risk reward profile types of investments, and using some of that language of finance I think can help tell that story. But again, reframing the conversation to value, because that's what the senior leaders want. And I will say that so many product problems, I've learned this as a consultant, that even when you get kind of that well-meaning product team who's like, yeah, we're all teammates on a mission and we're here to work together and we're going to all go to visit the customer together, that senior leadership behind them and maybe crafting reward systems and things like that and saying, this is what we need you to do this year. It's so important to get them in place, because otherwise all the well-meanings, it's like there's a contradictory current almost.
100%
pushing against a product team. And if you can discover what that is and then turn it around through these conversations about value, that's when a team can really get rolling.
Well, honestly, and I totally agree with what you're saying, Jason, because there's another side to it too, where you have those leaders that are like, well, I'm hiring smart people. I'm hiring smart people. They'll do the job. Like, I'm going to hire smart people. And then, they don't manage those people. They don't actually manage, right? Because, people too often look at the manager as a noun when it's actually a verb. You actively need to be managing people, and you need to be involved. And that's where I find that senior leadership, find it sometimes can be opportunistic to say, well, that's your job. You go and do that thing. Well, I don't like that. Okay. How about this? No, I don't like that either. Well, how about this? I don't like that either. Okay. Yeah. Right. And that's where I find a lot of problems with, those folks, because they are pulled in so many different ways. Just like you said, they're well-meaning, right? But, that's why you have to be careful. You're not pulling what I call the Seagull Maneuver, the swoop and poop, where you swoop into a sprint meeting and you're like, why are we working on these things? We should be doing this. And then you fly out and people are like, oh, what are we doing now? Right.
And good communication, again, it's an old story, but good communication certainly helps. Early communication, lightweight communication, instead of over formalizing things and saying, okay, we've got, in 1 month, we've got the big presentation to the executive council or whatever, and we're all going to have to make sure that it's sort of a high stakes thing. Those high stakes conversations certainly are valuable and in many cases unavoidable.
Yep.
but have them happen more often and more frequently on smaller bases, so small corrections can be made all along the way, and you'll probably find yourself a little more successful.
Yeah, I'd like that. Yeah, I've found that just over the years, especially in building teams or working with clients or all these different things, is that these big looming presentations or these big looming demos or these things they just set a level of anxiety with folks that you don't need to have. And again, back to, people talking about the benefits of Agile, right? If you're demoing every other day, like that's fine. You don't, it depends on your product, your team, your customer base. I've definitely run into places where I've seen consultants come in and say, well, you're not doing Agile right. And it's like, well, for this product, this is the perfect way to do it, and here's why. And again,
this is maybe a subject for our next conversation. But doing Agile right. I mean, if you think about the Agile Manifesto, it's really a set of principles, sort of this over this, versus an exact methodology. That's the point. It's really about letting a team organize itself in order to respond well to the needs of the market versus executing a precise, well-documented project plan that might actually be producing the wrong.
Well, that's why that communication is so important to your point, because that product manager and that team might be taking on exactly what's the customers and so forth are saying and what they're looking for, but the executive team might be looking at those requests differently, and I've seen it just come down to nomenclature, Jason, about the push and pull between the sales and executive teams on what the product team is delivering. When it's like, well, we're going to improve the onboarding experience, that's what the clients need, to your earlier kind of metaphor there, where I've seen it come down to meetings where salespeople are like, well, people are having problems signing up, not the onboarding experience. It's like,
you're like, that's the same thing.
Okay.
That's what I meant, right?
Yes, you are right. They are having problems signing up, which is what we call but again, if you don't have those teams that are communicating well, you're going to run into, I know we're laughing and it seems like, but I've literally seen those types of conversations happen, and people are pissed, people are mad, and they're trying to get their agenda pushed through. And sometimes it just comes down to, because if they just would have had better communication, would be great.
It's funny you mentioned that. Consulting client that we're working with right now at SDG, one of the fairly early things we did in this product engagement is try to get crisp on our definition of certain terms. And we even used terms, and this is for an ed tech product. So something like orientation has a very particular type of meaning versus onboarding. So, what is bringing a new entire school on versus what's bringing a new student on, and some of these things, just so we have our terms clear. And that can help a bit too. And it can also help to get outside of just the words and like depict what you're talking about. One of the great tools of the product manager and the experience designer is the sketch. Even if it's just a little whiteboard or a Sharpie on a piece of paper. So no, I'm talking about when you go from here to here, and there's a little bit of a potential for, derailing in between. That's the thing that we have a problem with. Do we all agree on that? Okay, we're going to call that onboarding for the sake of this conversation. But we all know now what we're talking about.
Yep, exactly. Well, and just to wrap things all kind of up in a bow, I mean, we've talked about assembling a great product team, making that vision, making sure you have good access to your end customers, right? And ability to measure and buy-in from senior leadership. I mean, all this kind of wraps up into a mindset overall, a product mindset that you've talked about, and I know you've blogged about quite a bit. Can you talk to me about, what is how do I know if I have a product mindset, Jason, or is it something I'm constantly always working towards?
Yeah, I mean, you are always working towards it, and it's probably more of a continuum versus a binary, you either have it or you don't. But I think of a product, I define a product as a response to a human need that delivers benefit to the recipient and to the deliverer of it. So I'm responding to the thing you need with some, software or system that helps you accomplish what you need to accomplish. Yep. And you are willing to pay me for that or do something else good for me. And so we've got this kind of nice exchange. So understanding that that's what the product is, it's that response, it's that understanding to a human need. And then the product mindset is behaviors, processes, rituals, team organizations that are designed to optimize your ability to deliver a great response to that human need. So it's, are you listening to your customers a lot? Are you happy when a requirement changes? Because that means, by golly, we learned more. Yep. We know something more about our customers versus, a requirement change. I guess I got to go fill out the requirement change form and go through the requirement council to get them to approve. That's more of a kind of project feature type mindset. Yep. And again, the product mindset is requirements, design, the way we think about resources, the way we think about structuring teams, what we reward, what we celebrate. I've got another blog post called Let Them Eat Cake coming out on the Solution Design Group blog. That's literally about why do you put cake in the break room? It's because you've learned something more. You've achieved a great outcome for your customer or your business, not just we got a thing done and now we can all go on our merry way.
Right. It could even be something that didn't perform as well, but now you have a clear direction for the next thing, right? So some people might call that failing, but now if you have even a clearer direction, like that can be amazing, right?
Totally. Yep.
Yeah.
Totally. Yep. Yeah.
Well, because I mean, again, it's because like I said at the beginning of this conversation, the lack of clarity on the role itself, I think, creates a lot of whatever you want to call it, imposter syndrome, all these different things with folks. And so, people try to glam onto like, oh, I'm going to do product canvas. I'm going to do design sprints. I'm going to do whatever sort of framework and whatever new book that came out from Google or whatever. I'm going to glom onto that. I'm going to try to cram that into whatever project or process we have. When to your point, it's really about that end customer and that team, and whatever's working for that works. And it's not to say you can't try some of these different things, but these things are just tools and frameworks to help you achieve what the ultimate goal is, which is just like you said, which is rewarding people with something that helps them accomplish a goal or a task.
You got it. That's exactly right. So again, I think a product manager can come from any of a variety of, career paths. User experience designers often make great product people because they're sort of naturally in tune with delighting the user. Technologists make great product people. It's really about, sort of a broad-minded mindset, some of these kind of human factors that we talked about. And there are methodologies, the pragmatic marketing framework or product school now has a curriculum for product management. But really a great team, an inspiring vision, an ability to measure results, leadership that supports you, and an obsession and access to the customers. I'll bet on that team every day.
Yeah.
That's got that group, no matter what their certifications or background is.
That's awesome. Well, Jason, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. If I want to know more and connect with you, because everybody watching this should connect with Jason. He puts out some great stuff, and I definitely suggest you read his blogs. Where can I find out more about what you're doing, Jason, and how can I connect with you?
Again, I am a consultant with Solution Design Group. So if you go to solutiondesign.com and look at our blog, our insights blog and our menu, you'll see several blogs posts on the product mindset. I also have older and reprinted posts on jason.scherschligt.com. I'm one of those guys with a difficult last name who gets to own his own last name as his domain name. And then I'm also fairly active on Twitter, but you might hear me ranting about the Minnesota Vikings too, at Searchlight5 as well. So
awesome. Well, Jason, again, thank you so much for taking the time, and can't wait to have you back on the show to talk about all things product.
Awesome. Nice talking with you, Kurt. And with everyone.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join me and Jason for our conversation around product management. If you've got questions or comments, go ahead and put them in. I mean, and hit the subscribe, like button and all the things, come on. It gets more people to check out the show, which I truly appreciate, especially because we have a lot of amazing stuff coming up. I'm really excited for this year. Going to be trying to do 2 live shows a week soon-ish. And the podcast just hit 150 episodes. So, if you're going on a very long cross-country trip at some point, you got a lot of content you can catch up on there. And one last thing, again, just to mention, we are hiring at Foundry, foundrymakes.com/careers. Thank you so much for taking the time again for joining us. We'll see you next time.